Well, hi everyone, and let me go onto the big screen here. It's so nice to see everyone here for Francine's book launch, and I'm Gloria Mindak, editor and publisher of Cervena Barva Press, and so I welcome you tonight to the launch. And our special guest tonight is Brad Rose. Cervena Barva Press has published two books by him, Word in Edgewise Poems in 2024 and Momentary Turbulence in 2020. After Brad and Francine read, there will be a short Q&A in which I will ask Francine some questions. So let's get started. I love what Howie Good says about Brad's writing, and I quote, "When it comes to prose poetry, Brad Rose plays, to borrow his own phrase, first violin in the orchestra of the absurd." For me, I always look forward to what Brad writes because it always surprises me, and I love his wit in his work. And you can read more about Brad Rose at bradrosepoetry.com. And now, give you Brad.
Thanks very much, Gloria. And thanks, Francine, for inviting me to read. I'm really honored and I'm really excited about reading your book. I'm going to read just four pieces tonight. They're one paragraph pieces. The first one is called Tickle. I wouldn't be caught dead impersonating a cadaver. It makes me wonder, though, how long I'd have to be sorry. By the way, which side of gravity are you on? Oh, terrific. I hear that's no longer the leading cause of death, at least among parachutists. I guess I'm fundamentally a problem solver, although some people seem to think that's just a smokescreen for my habit of fighting fire with arson. For dinner tonight, I'm going to be currying favor and binge watching robot TV so that I can keep up with the Joneses. I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of living paycheck to paycheck. It's like a camera taking a picture of a camera. Say, do you know that rats laugh when you tickle them? Yeah, they have a great sense of humor, too. Here, grab this big gray one. See for yourself. Shoulder season. It's shoulder season, so I need to sharpen the blades on my backyard guillotine. The best defense is an extremely succinct offense. It's an uphill battle, but luckily, it's the greatest thing in the world for your brain. Also, it looks impressive on your resume. Of course, there's only so much a sentient being can be expected to withstand. Here's a list of some of the recent winners. No, I don't speak French, but I have a beautiful Parisian accent. In fact, I've been training my hair to look the part. You know, existentially new wave. When you do it yourself, you never know for sure what you're going to get. But I like to leave the door open. Besides, no one knows where the bodies are buried. Relief Jester. While styling my multicolored clown costume, I fell into a polarizing force field. I don't think it was just a publicity stunt, because the sticker shock nearly electrocuted me. Of course, my zesty neo-lumberjack outfit would have looked better on a real model, but I was elected by secret ballot. I'm a man of the people, so out of the gooiness of my heart and the promise of a 79% pay raise, I agreed to play the part, at least until a relief jester was located. Big mistake. The last piece is called Tall Plans. Excuse me. Gonna buy some giant furniture for my 50-foot tall fiance. I love her like I'm twice my height. We're planning a destination wedding at the zoo. Maybe we'll have a big cash giveaway and a family-friendly barbecue on the meaty grass. With a little luck, everyone will be exempt from capital gains tax. After our honeymoon, she and I plan to move into a little palace with old worm charm and a sunken living room jacuzzi. Until then, I promise not to look at the other girls, at least until after the ceremony. I mean, who doesn't like to have a little fun now and then? Basketball, anyone? Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. That was wonderful. And now it's time to celebrate the publication of Some Distant Pin of Light. And if you haven't seen the book, here it is. And I can't tell you what an honor it was to publish this book, which is an exploration of life's fleeting moments, capturing the essence of human emotion with lyrical precision. Her poems delve into themes of love, loss, and the passage of time, blending vivid imagery with evocative language. When I first read Francine's manuscript, I knew I just had to publish it. And some of her lines just knocked me for a loop. So this is a real honor. And now a little bit about Francine. Francine Witte won a Pushcart Prize this year, is an award-winning poet, flash fiction writer, and playwright. She is the author of 12 books of poetry and flash fiction, and her work has appeared in numerous journals and anthologies. She is a native New Yorker and attends and produces poetry events in the vibrant New York City scene. She is co-host and co-curator of the online reading The Prose Garden. She is the flash fiction editor for Flash Boulevard and South Florida Poetry Journal, a former high school English teacher. She now leads writing prompt sessions on Zoom. She holds an MFA in creative writing poetry from Vermont College and an MA from SUNY Binghamton. And you can check out her website too at francinewitte.com. And in the chat is a link if you're interested in purchasing her book. And now I give you Francine.
Thank you so much, Gloria. I'm truly overwhelmed. I feel like just tearing up seeing all of your beautiful faces, and I appreciate your being here so much. Many of you are missing Jeopardy. So, that's a big deal. That's big time as far as I'm concerned. So, I want to, of course, thank Gloria Mindock and everyone associated with Cervena Barva Press for producing my book so beautifully. And I want to thank Brad Rose for reading tonight. And I want to thank Amy Marquez, who is acting as our bouncer. So behave. I also want to give a very special shout out to my beautiful Aunt Miriam, who is here. She is going to be 101 in January, and she comes to mostly all of my Zoom events. And I love her so much, as does everyone else who knows her. And I want to dedicate my reading tonight to her. This is for you, Aunt Miriam. Okay, I want to start with the idea. This is not a poem from the book, but it's kind of a general statement about poetry. A lot of people say, oh, are you the person in that poem, or who's that person you're writing about? And I want to say that all poets are big fat liars. This poem is about that. In my poems, sometimes I have children, daughters mostly, because I know their routines, flat irons and tampons. To invent boys, I would need to ask questions, learn to talk sports. In my poems, sometimes my children appreciate me. Pretend daughter Fiona says things like, Mom, if it weren't for you, I'd be living in an essay, for crying out loud. She's right. If I were a made-up child, I would prefer the crinoline swish of a simile, so much kinder than the hard angles of nonfiction. A pretend son wouldn't be so generous. He would say, he's a lie. I'd tell myself to feel better about what I haven't done. I would laugh at him. Pretend mothers can do that. Then I would sit him down and tell him, my poems aren't lies at all. They're just the truths that didn't happen. Now I'm going to read from the book. And this is the first poem, Map of Me. Let's start by saying this isn't a map you'd fold up in a glove box or pull up on a GPS. And maybe it's not a geography anyone wants to travel. I mean, hell, some days even I don't. It's just that I started drawing it one night after too many glasses of wine, and somebody asking me what I was looking for. He probably meant in a husband, that loaded question online dates ask when they're trying to get laid. I said, there's a part of me that wants kids, and I labeled that part the ovaries. Somewhere mid-terrain, meanwhile, my brain up north kept saying white carpet, spontaneous sex, and other childless things. This went back and forth until I gave up, zigzagged random lines, fake boundaries. And now anyone looking at me can see that my borders are always shifting. If you try to read this like a real map, it is liable to drive you into a lake. Meanwhile, my roads go unpaved, my routes unmarked. I probably have countries inside me talking secession, rebel leaders planning a coup, uprising even the press is too afraid to cover. And there I am, just sitting and pouring myself another glass of wine. The year of you gone. It was month number 5 in the year of you gone. Some people still called it May. Not me. I wouldn't give it a name. It barely deserved a number, though the whole year circled me in a zero. Everywhere was sad with daffodils hunched over like old women, branches scabby and bare. You would have liked it this year of you gone, might have said it suited me, but you were busy elsewhere with your own year, paintbrush of leaves against a pastel sky, the sun not a zero, but more of an open yellow mouth filled with fancy words and promises that would vanish quick as dandelion puffs blown into a trusting wind. The heart, a definition. It beats. It tells you who and who not to love. It tick-tocks your body, easing you further and further away from your birth. It is a valentine cut out in velvet and filled up with chocolate. It doesn't stop until you die. It is etched on the bark of a tree. It is the acorn inside the tree you turned into. It is a queen in the country of a deck of cards. It breaks. It will break again. It is already broken. The first snow. Not of the season, but ever. Falling like it did on unmanned land, sometimes fluttering upwards in a gentle spin of wind, feathered and swirled as the first thought which would come up in a much later snow when human appeared and thinks, I'm a thing. Later I will have a name and there will be billions of me. The unthought thought, of course, is how much clearer the snow would sound without the thwack of an axe or the crackle of fire, without the thud of boots squealing the ice that has no choice but to give in and split when the wind itself remembers being wordless and clean. Other summers. We were wolves then, doing the wander ponder, our hunter hearts pulling us through the forest night. We needed to eat adventure, and so we would nose push anything lying still. We would roll it over and roll it over, and when it did move even a little, we would tear into its skin, our teeth and tongues, a hurricane of need, the only light coming from the moon and a sash of milk stars. The only sound, the whisper of a wind in our throats, slowing back down to a breath. Uh, this next one is, next couple are prose poems, next two are prose poems. Thank you. I see these like nice hearts and smiles and claps and everything. I really appreciate it. Where did you go? I went thin as pears, all sliced up and see-through. I went halfway to happy. I went to a place where I don't have to answer. I went sniff in the air. I went to the arms of another. I went bent as bones. I went to a job without a computer, where I stand in a field and the sun wets my back. I went behind the numbers on a wristwatch. I went hundreds of miles from your eyes. I went all unmarried and you cannot stop me. I went where your questions stop smack in the air, long before they can get to my ears. I went to before I even know you, that spot in the morning about to begin, that curl of a mouth turning into a smile, that moment a flower opens up like a hand. Parking lots are where they keep the sheep now. After the cold stopped being cold, after we had to stop burning things, burning anything, after we gave up our cars, after the sheep wandered into the town looking for food that wasn't dry as hard pearls, after we tried to cut the sheep, but after we tried to eat the sheep, but cooking got too hot, and we were not strong enough to pull apart their sinew. After we looked at one another 8 billion times and said, "It's you. No, no, it's you." After we didn't even need the wool because we didn't need sweaters. And also, we could cut our own hair to knit them if that were ever to happen. After we pushed the leftover car shells down to the dry patch where the lake used to be and left them to rust or die or whatever it is that cars do. After the sheep kept banging their noses against the window screens because maybe they thought we had coldness or food when we didn't have either. After we roped them together and walked them down to the parking lots with the open storefronts that were gaping like mouths that can't even scream anymore. After we left the sheep and never spoke of them again. After we became after. And hey, remember COVID? It's almost 6 years, really, but still with us. So this is called To My Relatives Who Died Before COVID. My father, who loved the distance, loved being far from things, from us. My other city sister, who slumped sudden over a flip phone and wouldn't be able to mute. My mother, always lipstick, always powder. A mask would not have stopped her because she'd say, "People know." My grandmother, flu of 18, who knitted and baked and ended up vision loss and hearing loss, and that was her shelter in place. My free spirit aunt, who wouldn't have stayed home nohow, and rather she'd slip out to one of those bars with takeout only, her in the alley with her son's best friend, the two of them not hearing my uncle's muffled footsteps. All of them not believing. We can't see it. This couldn't happen. And yet, I remember the time we all stood at the beach and looked at the horizon. We thought it swallowed everything. Look, one of us even said, a whole boat hidden behind my thumb. Death sends me an email. But this was the year I was going to be young, walk the hell out of myself, unzip my skin suit, and Tinkerbell the globe. I really don't have time for death, I say to my computer and send death's email to the trash. Besides, if it's important, death can always text me, or better yet, call. The way my sister called that last time, though I didn't pick up the phone. No way to know it was the last chance I'd have. But see, death is that kind of asshole, lurking behind curtains and jumping out, surprise. Other times winking and winking, the way he did my mother's last agony year. No way to know what's on death's fickle mind, and so I fish out the email and open it. Turns out to be a spam from a window company. Death to bad insulation in the subject line, and I just misread. I sigh and settle back. I can be young some other time, travel some other year. And then I think of Death sitting at his own computer, clearing out the backlog. I can only hope my name is in some kind of file marked, get to this later. The kind of email he'd fuss over the wording, fidget every comma, maybe show it to his wife for feedback, rewrite it a couple of hundred times before he presses send. Um, this is, I guess, this is a prose poem. This is from New York City, from the Inside Anthology. It was published a few years ago. The moon takes the E train, stumbles drunk from a downtown dive, swirling himself, milk into coffee, down the stairs and onto the train, and then forgets his way home, gets off instead at 40 Deuce, looks around and remembers the old style scene. Hookers and porn flicks, how it opens, how often in his fullness he would push some poor sucker into Mr. Nasty's peep show. Watch him skulk out later, face wiped off, slither home to bridge and tunnel, lighter $20. But then the whole place went carnival, wax museums and kiddie theater, life-sized Elmo and Elsa, who will pose with you for a hefty tip. And he's looking around at all the lights blinking into the darkened dark. And that's when a couple approaches the moon and asks to take a selfie. How much it would mean, what with the moon being the thing that made them fall in love. And the moon has heard this all before, how he's pulled the tides and planted romance. But really, he has a long, long night ahead, trying to remember which subway will take him back to the sky. But instead, the moon takes a breath, looks at his reflection in the couple's eyes, nestles in between them, and smiles. The River's Wife. Each night, I ask him if he still loves me. He tells me instead how he started, handfuls of rain and mountain streams, how it trickled into a muscled flow. I ask him again, and that's when he goes back to hiss and spin. I give up and head home, lonely, cutting my feet on scrags of rocks and fallen twigs. Some nights I wake up, go to the kitchen, turn on the faucet full blast, water fingers lacing my own. My father warned me, said that the river is made up of all the tears from, made up of tears from all the fish that never made it out to sea. He said he was a river once, a foaming, raging twist of a man who lured my mother from the banks, how she gave up girl-like to his tumble and roar, how I myself am part river, how if I listen close enough, I can hear the whoosh that is louder than the beating of my heart. Teamwork. When I think about Jake, I think of him drop-kicked across the couch, freshman dorm, him coming back from a mixer where the punch was spun with vodka. He'd sleep it off, and when he woke, we'd talk to him for hours, me and Julie, whose baby would end up having Jake's eyes. Julie would say that Jake's a goof and everyone knows it, but that didn't stop love from smacking her in the heart. I wanted to warn her, but didn't. And 6 months later, Jake was needle dead. Julie would sleep in the scoop on the couch where Jake had flopped himself so many times. By now, Her belly had swollen into a face. When she tossed and turned, I could hear her dreams, where Jake had his ropey arms around her, swinging her do-si-do, the spin of it getting her passion drunk. When she woke up, she would shake her head, throw words like shame and potential into the air, let them sail like a football and splat to the floor. Now she calls out of nowhere, 20th reunion, and do I want to go? We haven't talked in forever, and she texts me a photo of her son, grown now, with Jake's gangly arms, only trackless. I think how sometimes the past can be fun, only not when it's a sick I finally got cured of. Not when the echoes of what I should have told her and told her again if she didn't hear it the first time. Walk away from it, another echo is saying, only this time it's for me, it's for Julie, and even in a way for Jake, whose ghost still hovers above us all, an invisible hand ready to press itself down. And the last poem I'm going to read is the last poem in the book, and it's called Our Star. Our star is really the sun, and billions of miles away, maybe someone is wishing on it, wishing for a last desperate chance at love. But here I am on this beach where people stretch out like dead exclamation points, tanning themselves to our star. Nearby, a wave breaks, pebble and salt and soapy foam. I wonder how far that wave could have gone without the beach to stop it. I pick up a grain of sand, infinitesimal, but this is how our star might look to that billion-mile lover. I picture him, a human wave, aching to break past his own beach-locked future, finally able to get whatever he could wish for on some distant pin of light. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francine. That was so powerful and just really absolutely wonderful. And so now we come to our questions. And so I'd like to start out asking you, how did you start writing poetry?
Well, I started writing poetry when I was probably in second grade. You know, I really loved Dr. Seuss. I still love him. I still have Cat in the Hat. Cat in the Hat comes back. And I love the rhythms and the rhymes. And, but that was kind of, silly kid stuff. I started writing more when I was 13, and I wrote a lot about war and hatred and prejudice, very dark stuff. Um, all my poems back then were very rhymed, and I didn't really know about, poetic devices like metaphor and simile, things like that. I was simply going rhymes and quatrains. Um, that's kind of what I thought was poetry. So later I went to the University of Vermont where I studied with Julia Alvarez, the writer of How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents. And she was a wonderful teacher, taught so much about craft. And, so she taught devices and forms and all that. And then from there I went to, I got my MFA at Vermont College, and I still take workshops and I've gone to conferences, like so many conferences and retreats. So that's how I started. So thank you for that question.
All right. And how did you choose poems for the book?
Well, that's always a challenge, how to choose anything for a book. So what I start with is every poem for me has to be a strong poem. Can't be those little filler poems. A lot of times people want to put a collection together and they say, well, I need 48 pages or I need 60 pages. So I'll put this poem in that it's not really strong. Nobody's going to notice, but you know what? People notice. They really do. So that's number one. Like it has to be what I would consider a 10 or at worst a 9. Okay. So that's the first thing I look for. Then I look at the poems that I've been writing. Well, these were poems that I was writing between, say, 2018 and 2022 or so, because my last poetry book came out, I think, in 2022, but I had written all these poems since, since it went in for publication. That's what always happens. You put your collection together. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about who's had a book published. And then you write all these other poems that you want to put into your manuscript, and it's like, it's too late. So so that's what I did. I looked at poems that I had written since my last book, and I looked for some common themes. I didn't want poems that were too similar to each other, but I wanted them to feel related in some kind of a way. And then I had to think about how to arrange them, what made sense. So it has like a loose feeling of chronology. I start with Map of Me, it's a very internal world. And then it ends up with this, the star, the universe. So it's kind of that trip along the way. But, I wasn't very literal. I was completely literal about that, but that was kind of my strategy in putting it together. So, and also chose some prose poems, which I'd never done before, because I started writing prose poems about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So I have some prose poems in here. So, and I think it added a slightly different feel to this collection than my previous one. So thank you for that question.
Okay, and the next one is, what are some of the main themes of the book?
Well, I usually write about 3 things: family memories, and again, a lot of it's very, what I tend to do is I take the essence of it and then I make up a whole lot of stuff. I don't like to write memoir. Well, for one thing, because I get all traumatized by my own memoir writing, boo-hoo. But also, I like to have fun with it. I don't want to just write, well, here's really what happened. I want to well, but what if this happened? What if my father did this? Or so I always approach it like that. So these are kind of memories, so like poems like Mother, Father, Landscape with Mother, It is 1951. Those are all in the book. Those are all about family memories. And I write about relationships a lot. There's a part of me that wants to be the Adele of poetry. I love writing breakup poems. I have in one of my other books have a whole bunch of poems about Charlie, and there's actually a poem about Charlie in this book. And Charlie is a composite of a lot of people that I've known, boyfriends and so on. And he's kind of a jerk, but he's not any particular jerk. He's my generic jerk, And so people would always say, "Who is he?" And I said, "Well, he's nobody really." So what I read, Where Did You Go? That was relationship, home shopping, The Year of You Gone. And then the third thing that I usually write about is the natural world and the environment, like the first snow, parking lots, our star. I kind of think that, I like to say, I love men, but I hate man. Okay. Because I think man has just done, I was just laughing at something somebody put in the chat. So I think if we could just focus all our energy on, hey, the earth is burning up, okay? Can we just talk about that for a minute, all of us? I don't understand why we don't do that, but okay. So I write a lot about that. And then I have some poems that are outside of those themes in here. Um, like Death Sends Me an Email and The River's Wife. Those were just kind of things I just came up with. So those are basically the themes that I'm talking about in the book. So thank you for that question.
Yes, it's funny when you said about you like to write about relationships. That's one of my favorite things too, except
Yeah,
not my own.
right.
So, anyway, the next question. You also write flash fiction. How do you decide if something is going to work better as a flash or a poem?
Well, I get that question a lot. And so, um, I think Flash and poetry are cousins, and they share a lot of the same DNA. They're very different genres, but they share a lot of the same DNA. Um, they use same kinds of literary devices, simile, metaphor, anaphora, things like that. But when but and it's not as simple as, well, I write flash when I want to tell a story, because I have a lot of narrative poems too. I have a lot of narrative prose poems. But I think what the difference for me is that poetry has room for more white space in it. The line breaks, like not talking about prose poetry, but the line breaks sort of signal to the reader, like, stop for a beat. Even if you've been jammed it into the next line, it's still stop. Like, look at this poem. There's just a few lines to it. Whereas a flash can be much tighter, and it's just different. And I think of a poem as more of a meditation than I do with flash. Even um, like a prose poem is very similar to a micro, but for my and I know Robert Scotolero is in the audience here, and he said that the difference between a prose poem and a micro is a prose poem is a helicopter and a micro is an airplane. You know, so one is sort of spinning around. The prose poem is spinning around, and the micro is going somewhere. Narratively, and I totally agree with that. So I think a lot of it has. So I think a lot of it has to do with the white space of lines that makes me think, yes, this is going to be a poem. I never really see. I've never had the experience though where I said, I'm starting to write this, and you know what? I thought it was going to be a flash, but I think it's going to be a poem. I've never had that happen. I always sit down. I always know what I'm going to write. This is going to be a poem. I don't know why it just works like that for me, but um, it just does. And so that's that I think is the basic difference for me, and why I would choose one over the other. I like to go back and forth, and I really do. Like, some days are just, today's a flash day, today's a poetry day, and no rhyme or reason, no pun intended there. Okay, so thank you for that question.
Okay, and the last question is, how do you get your ideas for poems?
Well, most often, I really advocate for walking around. You get a lot of ideas with movement, you know, and so I like to grab my little notes pad in my iPhone and just kind of dictate just even a phrase. Sometimes it's just a phrase. And that might even be a title, or it might be a line in the poem. And then I keep this collection. And then when I want to sit down and say, you know what, I think I want to write a poem today. What have I got in my backlog here? What have I got in my files? Like, what lines are going to jump out at me? So that's how I have my ideas. Just how they, you know, like, you might hear an interesting phrase that somebody says as you're walking down the street, like a little snippet of conversation. That could be a poem. But also, I love prompts. You know, I think prompts are very, very valuable. If you can, if you can go, like there are lots of online workshops and generative workshops, and they're really good, where they give you an example of a poem, and then okay, now you write a poem about the color blue, okay, and include a cup of wine in there, and include a hammer in there. Okay, there's a prompt, right? But there's something about someone else telling you to do it, and that's like very helpful. So prompts, workshops, and things that just pop into my head. That's where I generally get my ideas. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Francine. That was wonderful answers to those questions. And before we close, I have some thank yous also I would like to say. But first of all, can we please give Francine and Brad another round of applause? Such great work.
And I really want to thank everybody for being here. I can't even tell you how overwhelmed I am by seeing all of your beautiful faces and so many people I love. And there's Calliope holding up the book. Thank you for that. And we can maybe put the link in the chat again, if anybody wants to purchase it. Also, you can reach me at francinewitte.com. I try to make that easy. So, and I wanted to thank again Gloria for her hard work and really wonderful in putting this evening together. To Amy Marquez for her bouncer, and to Brad, and to all of you for being here. And Gloria.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much, everybody. And Amy, yay. And have a really good night. And don't forget to purchase her book if you don't have it. And thank you and good night.
Night, everyone.
Bye.